guys, it's Danny again with Partner Engineering, and welcome back. Today we've got a new tutorial for you. It's a 3-part series called the Cloud Migration Journey. So what we're going to be doing today is stepping through this tutorial and understanding how we can leverage Kong Konnect and Kong Mesh to help your migration journey to the cloud. First of all, what's the problem statement? We know that a lot of organizations today are migrating those applications from on-premise to the cloud, and really irrespective of the containerization strategy we take, we could be lift and shifting, we could be doing green dev already in the cloud, we end up building out this hybrid cloud infrastructure where some of the application state runs on-premise, some of it in the cloud. How can we really minimize the impact of that and support your journey into the cloud more efficiently? That's where we came up with the CrawlWalkRun Strategy. It's going to help reduce the impact and minimize the networking infrastructure so that you can focus on really just building and shifting your applications to the cloud. So let's go ahead and get started. So in this tutorial, what are we going to be doing is migrating this sample monolith application. It's got 4 features to it: card, balances, and charges, payments, and disputes. We want to take this disputes functionality running in this monolith and deprecate it for a new microservice that's going to be running in the cloud. And how are we going to be doing this? We're going to be simulating our on-premise and cloud infrastructure all in AWS. So on the left-hand side, we're going to be an on-premise environment. It's going to have 3 EC2 instances. One for our Connect gateway, and when we get to it, our Kong Mesh Universal Zone services. The second EC2 instance is going to be for our Kong Mesh Global Control Plane. The Postgres database is going to be for the Zone Kong Mesh Zones Control Plane. And then the last EC2 instance is for the monolith. That is our on-premise environment, and then our cloud infrastructure is going to be an AWS EKS cluster running in Amazon, obviously. Okay, so how are we going to be doing this? We talked about briefly the crawl, walk, run strategy. So what does that look like? Well, this is a phased migration approach, and we generated it because we know that often when we're deploying new technologies, we often bite it off more than we can chew, right? So we came up with an approach for you where we could kind of work through it in pieces that really protected our networking infrastructure and our API consumers, but still gave us the flexibility to migrate to the cloud. So what's going to happen during this phased migration approach? First phase in crawl is where we're just going to install Connect on our on-premise environment and really just onboard the monolith to that Connect gateway and really just make sure that we've provided any north-south security policies, maybe rate limiting, maybe authentication that we want. Phase 2, walk, is where we're going to introduce Mesh, and this is where we're really going to take advantage of the power that Kong Mesh supports of VMs as well as Kubernetes-based services, and we'll see how that plays out. But we're going to deploy it on-premise and then onboard, connect, and our monolith application to the mesh. But again, the API consumer, our clients at this point, are experiencing no changes in the traffic, no new functionality. And then the last step is run. And in the run step is where we're actually going to execute. We've installed all the networking infrastructure we need, so we're ready to go ahead and do that, deprecate that monolith functionality for the new microservice running in the cloud. So that is crawl, walk, run. Let's go ahead and get back to the demo and get started with installing the prerequisites. So for the prereqs, this demo only runs on Linux or macOS. You do need an AWS account to install of that simulated infrastructure we just talked about. In terms of Connect, what's really great is Kong Konnect will be able to use free tier, and actually for Kong Mesh, we'll be able to use free tiers as well, so you don't require any extra licenses. If you have not created a Kong Konnect account, go ahead and follow this link to go do that. And please also create a personal access token because we'll be syncing up configuration. If you don't, so you'll be if it's your first time in Connect, you'll have a default runtime group, which we'll be using. But if you prefer to change out the runtime groups and create a new one, then follow the instructions to set up a new runtime group. You do need the AWS CLI, Docker Desktop, Insomnia, because this is where we'll be executing, doing our validation and testing from Insomnia Desktop App, and Make. Okay, so let's go ahead. If you haven't already, go ahead and download this Git repository, navigate into the parent directory, and let's get started. So we've created a make file for you just to reduce, it requires, so we have Terraform and Ansible under the hood, kind of spinning up the cloud infrastructure and then walking through each phase. So we've abstracted that away for you. Once you've gotten the downloaded the repo, go ahead and execute the second step, which is step 2, build containers. We're going to build out these 2 containers for you, Terraform and Ansible. We do need to know your architecture type, so go ahead and please select the correct one. And then that will start building the containers. This will take a second, so I will see you guys when this is done. Okay, so step 2 completed, where we just built the containers. So we're gonna move on to step 3, where we need to do a little bit more prep. We need to create this .kmj directory, so we're gonna step through a number of prompts here. The first one is going to be, it's going to prompt you for your AWS credentials for the CLI, and then we're going to open up a config that we need for Terraform and go ahead and get that configured. So copy make prep command, paste that into the terminal, configure the AWS CLIs you need, and then let's get into the user Terraform bars file. Starting from the top for the connect pat, paste in your pat token. You can leave the default runtime group as default, or the connect runtime group as default if you want to use that. This me var is just to avoid collision, so I'm just going to put my first and last name, and that is all we need. If you look through the AWS infrastructure settings, I set it up with some defaults, a really small CIDR and subnets. You're welcome to change it out. Once you're done, go ahead and close that. And now we're ready to get to step 4, which is deploy the infrastructure. I'm going to copy the command and deploy the infra. This is going to take 10 to 15 minutes to spin everything up, so I will see you guys when this is done. Okay, so the infrastructure is done installing. We can go ahead and just do a quick validation of that from the terminal. I want you to just go ahead and we're going to tail up the logs for Terraform. So you're going to find that under your KMJ directory, logs, and then if you infra deploy, it'll tail the last bit. So if everything was successful, you can go ahead and just validate where the cluster information is, everything that was spun up, the region, etc. Okay, but we're ready to move on to the actual phase 1 of the actual tutorial, which is the crawl strategy. So let's go back and look at that again real quickly. So within our phase migration approach, we're going to start in this first step of the 3-phase approach, crawl, which is really just about connect. What we're going to be doing in this first phase is really just installing the Konnect runtime instance into our simulated on-premise environment. Once we've installed it, it's going to run on a VM. Once we've installed it, we're going to onboard the monolith and then just validate that an API consumer can reach the monolith service through the gateway. So let's go ahead and get back to our tutorial. And there are some install steps we have to do here. So go ahead and copy this from step 5. Copy this make command, which is Kong phase 1, and go ahead and get started on that. So now we're at the step where all of these 3 phases are actually being executed by Ansible. So what's going on in this phase is we're installing the Konnect runtime instance. It's also called a data plane. There's a couple of automation steps happening in the background. First is we're creating self-signed certificates and pushing that up to Konnect. That's what you can see in the output going on here right now, is just creating those certificates and then making an API call to push it up to Konnect. That's so that we can have control plane, data plane communication. Once that's set up, it's then downloading the Konnect as a Docker container and running that on the VM. Then it's moving on to the monolith and spinning up that Docker container. So now it looks like the playbook's done. One thing I want to point out is there's a lot of facts floating around in the tutorial, right? We've got a lot of VMs, we've got Kubernetes going on, and we're going to be playing in Insomnia. So there's this demo facts output that I want you to copy to a text editor. If you lose it, that's okay. You can also find it within the your .kmj directory. So let's take a look at that. If I just go KMJ Ansible demo, just just gonna cut this out. There they are as well, in case you just happen to lose track of where you are. Okay, so it looks like that's done. Let's go up to Connect and validate that we can see the container or the runtime instance working. Go to your runtime manager, go to default, and I do have a number of Connect data planes running at the moment, but the one that we are looking for is this IP39 that was connected 2 minutes ago. So it looks like it's connected. Okay, so now we want to go ahead and configure the runtime group now that we've got both the data plane and the monolith service up and running. So we are logged in Connect. We're just going to follow these steps to create this new gateway service, and then it's going to be followed by the route. So we're going to create a new gateway service called migration, protocol HTTP, and then we need the monolith IP address defined in the demo effects. The base URL to the monolith is monolith/resources and port 8080. So go into your runtime group, default. So make sure you've selected the correct runtime group. So I'm in default, create, on the left-hand side, select gateway service, add a new gateway service. I'm gonna call this migration. I'm gonna select the second radio button, add using protocol host and port path. I'm gonna leave protocol HTTP. The host I'm gonna pull from my demo facts. Just grab the IP address of your monolith. The port is the port that the service is running on. It's going to be 8080, and then the path is going to be monolith/resources. Okay, go ahead and save that. And now we need to create a route. From this main page, select route, add a new route. Let's follow the instructions. So we just did step 4. Now let's go to step 6, add the route, on-premise, HTTP, just the GET requests for the methods, and a path of on-prem. Okay, on-prem. I'm just going to put this on protocol HTTP, path, on-prem. I'm going to add a new rule, methods, GET, and go ahead and save that. So once that's ready, we should be able to start validating. So in the validation, this is where we're actually going to be doing this Insomnia. What I did is I gave you guys within this repository an Insomnia doc that you can go ahead and upload, Insomnia collection that you can go upload. So go ahead and get that done. Take a moment to pause the video and get that done. And navigate into the collection, should be called Migration Journey, and we're going to open up Phase 1 subfolder. So I'm in Insomnia at the moment, Phase 1. And we have all of these requests for all of the services that we talked about in the beginning for the monolith. So let's go ahead and execute this. You can see it says prompt right here in the URL because we're going to get prompted for the IP or the host name of where the Connect data plane is running. Since it's a dynamic infrastructure, I wanted it to be easy for you to input. So when you select send, it's going to prompt you for runtime instance IP. Grab that from your demo facts, go submit, and you should get a 200 response with account type, card number, and ID. So that's for the first API. Let's do it again for the next request. Make sure they're all working. There are no payments. It's a great way to be. Balance is working. See if I have any charges. I've got 2 charges and disputes is working, but we can see that disputes is pretty lame. Please dial in to see disputes on file. So that's why we decided as a business that we needed to migrate disputes first, because it doesn't really do anything at the moment. So that's it for this first tutorial where we've executed, where we went through the crawl strategy. And let's just cover again what we did here. For this first phase in crawl, we just spun up, we have our simulated on-premise environment. We spun up inside a VM, a runtime instance that's our Connect data plane hooked up to our Connect control plane. And then we onboarded the monolith to and to connect, so that the monolith is now being protected by the connect data plane or gateway, and then validated that we can make API calls via Insomnia. And this would be the phase. We didn't do any north-south security like rate limiting or authorization, but this would be the phase that you'd want to go ahead and implement that, any additional policies that you'd want in your gateway. So in the next video, we're going to get into Walk. Walk is where we're going to introduce Kong Mesh and understand how we can leverage Kong Mesh, the universal deployment strategy of Kong Mesh, to onboard our on-premise services to the mesh, and then get very close to, the next step will be run. Cool. Okay, so thanks for joining me for this first tutorial of Cloud Migration Journey, and I will see you guys in a little bit.